it out this time. Very exciting to see. You know, I guess you don't. I don't know if any of the health items I've seen on Brute Bonnet in the past have been like super incredible, so maybe it's a good Pokemon to gamble a little bit with, but wow, for such a strong trainer to be using Bright Powder is really unexpected.
Well, we're going to have to see if Brute Bonnet and its Bright Powder will be out on the field at all in this set. Instead, it's going to be the two Paldean Pokemon staring down each other, Koraidon setting the sun. Of course, the Galarian Weezing has blocked the electric terrain from being set up and has lowered the power of the Landorus on the other side. But that Scarf Miraidon does have the opportunity to still be the fastest thing out on the field here, able to bounce back with a Volt Switch, or even just try to go for big damage with a Draco Meteor right into that Koraidon.
Yeah, I mean, I think also kind of an interesting factor here, where certainly on Mikhail's side, you'd love to get rid of this Weezing as quickly as you can. That can sometimes be a bit of a bait, but you know, in order to keep that pressure from Weezing, you really have to stay on the field. So you're finding those opportunities to knock it out and advance the game state to kind of get to a more normal battling condition will certainly be an early objective of this match.
All right, well, here is the electric terrestrialization from the Miraidon. Michael has lost the terrain, has lost the boost from the Hadron engine, so needs to go for the terrestrialization to try to boost the power of the Electro Drift. Of course, this is Choice Scarf, not Choice Specs. So there are so many different multipliers that we're used to seeing from the Miraidon no longer active because of the Galarian Weezing. Terrestrialization will be matched by the Koraidon on the other side as the Electro Drift will come out onto the Galarian Weezing. Typically this would be a scary place to be, but with all of those multipliers down, Weezing tanks that like a champ. And a Flare Blitz will just fire right back out from the Koraidon in the sun with the Terrestrialization, pick up a one-hit KO on the Landorus immediately.
And there's the value of being the side that has the field effects active. You know, one side misses the knockout because it doesn't have hits, and big knock for the Koraidon. Hey, Weezing's still going to get to fire off a Play Rough. It does what it does. You know, it's doing its best, but hey, you know, that's some extra damage on the Miraidon that could matter later, perhaps allowing it to get just barely in knockout range of a weaker attack.
Well, has the Urshifu and Incineroar in the back on Michael's side to potentially stare down the Koraidon. Both of them would offer some really interesting advantages, intimidate onto the Koraidon. One of the big problems with the ability shield is you no longer can hold the clear amulet, or you can start threatening super effective damage with this Urshifu.
Yeah, kind of a fun position now where definitely double attacking is the obvious route here for Miguel, but you know, we did see his final Pokemon, which could be effective here, switching in to take a resisted hit if he can correctly anticipate what slot is going to be targeted here. So a lot of interesting options. The Sun active also going to reduce the damage of the water type attack for this Urshifu, although it's still an Urshifu, right? So I mean, reduced is still going to be a lot with one Pokemon so weakened and the other one weak against water type attacks.
Yeah, we'll be able to pick up the KO on the Weezing. Likely could not pick up the KO on the Koraidon because of the Sun. But again, this Choice Scarf from Miraidon is the fastest thing on the field, and it did still deal really good damage given all of the multipliers that we're used to seeing not being in effect. But this time around, that Electro Drift is just going to target down the Koraidon and deal so much damage, but not quite enough. Koraidon hanging on by a thread, enough to get this Flare Blitz off right back into Miraidon and knocks that Pokemon out. And a trade for a trade. Both of the restricted Pokemon on the field will be going down here. And this Weezing, unfortunately, will be left alone against this Urshifu.
Yeah, that'll likely be a knockout here, but a pretty critical knockout for Masayoshi to pick up there, or Masayoshi, excuse me, with now no longer having to worry with any restricted Pokemon in this game. So a little unfortunate there. We see a bicycle accident on the field, crash there, both the bicycles being removed from the road. And Weezing actually just barely going to get knocked out. Yeah, it was actually quite a bit closer than I thought it was going to be. So we'll have to see what Pokemon Masayoshi has in the back. But you know, on Mikhail's side, maybe not an ideal situation here with two unrestricted Pokemon remaining and still a few turns of Sun to have to deal with here to reduce the damage of the one really meaningful offensive Pokemon left in this Urshifu.
On the plus side, Weezing is down, which means that Michael finally has access to his abilities once again. That means that Urshifu will be able to hit through Protect, and the Incineroar will be able to intimidate these two special attacking Pokemon.
But they are spooked, yeah, unfortunately only from a statistical perspective, because I think probably a decent position here if you're Masayoshi, where likely Mikhail not hoping for that Walking Wake in the back there, which has a fantastic matchup against the Incineroar, and will comically resist the damage from the water type attacks of the Urshifu now, both resisting it twice with both of its types and enjoying the weather here, which will be advantageous, strangely, for the partially water type Walking Wake, where it's just fully a hindrance for Urshifu.
Yeah, just like New Orleans itself, Walking Wake gets stronger when it gets hotter. The humidity rising on the field here has access to that Hydro Steam, but crucially it is Assault Vest, so does not have access to Protect, making it very vulnerable to that Fake Out pressure. But even if you went for Fake Out pressure, what could you do back? That just means that Hydro Steam is going to have to connect onto the Incineroar. Incineroar's own Assault Vest doing a lot to protect it, as a Astral Barrage will come out from the Calyrex and bring both to the red health and critically break the Focus Sash on that Urshifu.
This is getting kind of interesting, though, where you would assume a decent amount of damage coming the other direction now from this knockoff. It's going into the Walking Wake slot. Easily picked up that knockout there. I'm not sure the critical hit mattered. And now, Calyrex in a position where things could get a little bit interesting here because of that Assault Vest on the Incineroar.
Yeah, but if it can get through a couple of turns here with the Focus Sash intact.
Well, the Focus Sash matter, though, because I mean, I assume it's an Aqua Jet and a knockoff going the other direction. So this is going to be pretty close. I guess we'll see the Detect first. No reason not to, really. If Incineroar survives this, Mikhail's probably going to pull this one back.
Here's the Astral Barrage into the Protect and will be resisted and have the Assault Vest on Incineroar. Can it survive this barrage? It does with 3 hit points. 30 damage, not enough damage to pick up the KO. Knockoff knocks off the Focus Sash and activates it at the same time. And there it is. Aqua Jet will clean this up for Michael and go up 1-0.
A really well-played game there by Mikhail. The trading looked a little scary early in the game, but his Pokemon are trained to be able to take on this very common restricted Pokemon. Incineroar able to hang on there, really seeing the value of really both the item choices of these unrestricted Pokemon, with Incineroar taking those hits so well with the Assault Vest. And sometimes we see a choice item on that Urshifu that would not have worked there. Instead, able to switch moves. We see it using, I believe, all 4 of its moves exactly once. So perhaps watching the Professor Cup yesterday for some advice.
I was very surprised at the damage that came out from Walking Wake into the Assault Vest Incineroar. Just not enough. And usually you see Walking Wake with something like a Life Orb to help boost that. And on Masayoshi's side, does have the Water Terra type to also keep boosting that Assault Vested damage. But of course, the pressure of the Miraidon on Michael's side, threatening Draco Meteor into Koraidon, meant that Masayoshi had to Terra on turn 1 and didn't have access to that additional boosted damage, which would have won the game.
Yeah, we didn't end up talking about the terrestrialization too much, but I think it really did matter there, where Mikhail did get the extra damage from the electric terrestrialization, which mattered a little bit, and then not calling it correctly the other direction. I guess it's tough not to go for the terrestrialization there, because you're just tossing the game if you're wrong, but because it didn't happen there, didn't really get any value at all from that terrestrialization, and seeing like a close combat going the other direction. Kind of interesting, because I don't know how well you adjust to that in game 2, right? If you're in the same situation, you probably still have to make the same mistake, because you're really going to risk throwing this set by guessing wrong and just getting Draco Meteored on the first turn.
I mean, you always have the ability to double protect on that turn 1 to see what Miraidon will lock into. But not wanting to give up that, that's a very passive turn 1, and that could allow Michael to reposition to a more advantageous position into the Koraidon and the Weezing. So I understand Masayoshi not wanting to just be so passive, but there are options there to scout out the Choice Scarf Miraidon.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have liked to see that too. I think the flip side too, as you're kind of mentioning, it's likely that Mikhail's goal early in the game is going to be to try to get rid of that Weezing. I think if you show the double protect there, you're leaving the Weezing really vulnerable, where at the very least, you kind of don't have an option. You either have to take it off the field or take a trade there. And even if it's not the Draco Meteor, right? If it had been the Volt Switch instead, you're going to switch out and kind of allow something to get obliterated in order to not really get any advantage. It's a tough spot, so not too surprised that we see the same lead from Masayoshi's side, but it's actually going to be Mikhail who's switching things up here, using the other restricted Pokemon alongside Landorus once again. Yeah,
that's going to be the Calyrex Ice Rider alongside the Landorus this time instead of the Miraidon. But still, like you mentioned, the Koraidon and Weezing for Masayoshi will maintain control of the terrain of the Sun, as well as being the only player with an active ability.
Yeah, potentially, again, similar situation to that last game as well, where Landorus is theoretically threatening a lot of damage on the other side of the field. Actually, even that taunt would be kind of annoying into the Weezing slot, but, the reality is that it would be a pretty difficult thing to do. The flip side, it's probably also attracting a lot of attention here, right? If you assume the focus is to go on the Landorus, so it can't fire off those powerful ground-type attacks, then maybe Calyrex can kind of just get away with a Trick Room here, where even with Weezing on the field, that's maybe an advantageous situation. Also, critically, that Fire Terra type matters a lot here, because that Weezing does have the Will-O-Wisp, which will not be successful, but does kind of force a Terastallization.
Yeah, this Calyrex is even more of a throwback than usual with both the Fire Terra type and high horsepower. A lot of players have been switching over to Fairy type or Water type for the Terastallization there instead. But just like in Game 1, Masayoshi will be Terastallizing the Koraidon immediately to try and resist Glacial Lance from that Calyrex. Does open itself up to an Earth Power from the Landorus, if Landorus could survive this Flare Blitz.
There's some tough turn ones for Landorus here. Worked out for Mikael last time, so we'll have to see if it works out once again.
No protect or Terastallization from the Calyrex, however. That will just be a taunt coming out from Weezing. Masayoshi does not want to see a Trick Room going up at all, but will take a Glacial Lance for its troubles. Deals good damage into both Pokemon. A lot of recoil damage onto Koraidon from that Flare Blitz. Will put it down into range for another Glacial Lance, or potentially, Miraidon with that Volt Switch without recoil, Glacial Lance with recoil.
Yeah, I love the Glacial Lance. I mean, obviously, easy to say in retrospect now that we know the Trick Room wouldn't have worked, but I think the chip matters a lot here, where now Miraidon is much more realistically threatening and not got either of these Pokemon, and that opens up a lot of reasonable moves for Mikael, right? An Incineroar switch here now makes a lot more sense, where you can just negate a Will-O-Wisp that way and hold Terastallization longer. Miraidon threatening a bunch of damage either direction, and even if your goal is to eventually get Trick Room out there, right? Maybe just Volt Switch one of these slots, maybe hard switch Incineroar and just wind up with this in a spot next turn where you're still threatening a Fake Out and the potential of a Trick Room with an untaunted Calyrex.
Yeah, but that Calyrex is currently taunted, so will not have access to Trick Room as an option in this potential turn. Will be finally the Terastallization coming out from Michael. Will be going to Terastallize the Miraidon for that extra damage and remove the weakness to Fairy typing, which of course Weezing could hit for super effective damage on, but even more critically, just getting that extra damage boost for these Electro Drifts. Happy to lock into Electro Drift, knowing that this is going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field, and happily picks up that KO onto Koraidon, its counterpart. That will leave this Weezing open to do something to this Calyrex, including going for a Will-O-Wisp, because there was no Terastallization out of the Calyrex, but it will just be that play rough once again. So Michael making an incredible call there to protect the Miraidon from that damage, and the Glacial Lance is enough damage to pick up that KO. And once more, Michael has flipped the momentum in this set and taken out both Pokemon at the same time.
Yeah, that might just be curtains. I mean, not only does he get that great 3-2 advantage, but now he gets all of his abilities back, takes out the Terastallized Pokemon on the opposite side of the field, has both of his restricted Pokemon out protecting one another, and their damage is all being boosted now, right? Where the Electric Terrain active to help the Miraidon, the Chilling Neigh helping out Calyrex, and hey, Walking Wake still has a decent type matchup here, and the Calyrex in the opposing side as well, which at least has a much better or clearer path to Focus Sash actually mattering this time. But I think it was a really great start by Mikael, and doing a great job of picking up the Weezing exactly on the turn he Terastallized, so it was never safe to go for that Will-O-Wisp.
Absolutely, but there is a lot of pressure coming out from both the Walking Wake and the Calyrex right now on Masayoshi's side. Like you mentioned, with Terastallization used on the Miraidon, that means that the Calyrex will still be weak to the Astral Barrage from Masayoshi's Shadow Rider Calyrex. And because we have Calyrex here, we know that there is no Urshifu in the back, so there is no priority damage coming out if Masayoshi is able to preserve that Focus Sash and allow it to be fast, take out the Miraidon, so it's now the fastest thing on the field.
Yeah, and I think that's what a pin is really going to be necessary here, where, Masayoshi doesn't have a lot of options, right? He's going to have to blow a hole into this team pretty quickly here if he wants to get back in this game. And Incineroar is one of the Pokemon that is perhaps better than any other at preventing that from occurring. Would still get chunked pretty hard here, perhaps with the double target. We saw last game that wouldn't even be a knockout.
Absolutely. What was not a knockout in game one at all. There's the protect from Calyrex, so Masayoshi thinks that that is the target for Michael here. And actually the Draco Meteor with the Photosynthesis boost, Walking Wake is faster than the Choice Scarf Miraidon, but is not able to pick up the KO with that Draco Meteor, just bringing Miraidon down to 43 hit points, and importantly, drastically reducing the special attack of that Walking Wake, which already wasn't dealing a lot of damage as the Assault Vest variant.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're knocking Incineroar out here. It's not the most threatened by Calyrex to start with, and Walking Wake is quickly going to play itself into a position where it's not all that threatening for the Incineroar either. Maybe playing for the big Draco Meteor crit later in the game. Certainly, the more immediate threat is the Miraidon, but you do still need to close here, and Mikhail's really played himself an excellent set so far.
Absolutely. With the Miraidon and the Incineroar out on the field, still threatening fake out pressure onto that Walking Wake because of the Assault Vest will not be able to protect itself. So Masayoshi really going to have to make some decisions here, but doesn't have a lot of options. No fake out coming out, actually. So the Draco Meteor will pick up the KO onto Miraidon. That does mean that this Walking Wake is at -4. So Michael has decided, more importantly, break the Focus Sash.
Yeah, and don't give up that free boost.
No free boost coming out to that Calyrex. An Astral Barrage will be single target into Incineroar, so dealing more than it did before, but still not very much at all. The U-turn will be the choice for Incineroar to reset fake out pressure for this next turn.
Yeah, I'm curious. Maybe you still don't use it, right? But at least having the threat of it is nice here. And hey, it didn't really matter what other attack Incineroar used there, where a knockout is fundamentally just going to get you in the same situation anyway, where you still need to tap it one more time. And this seems like a very dominant position for Mikhail now. Still getting to threaten that fake out for whatever that's worth. But with now the 4 levels of reduced special attack on Walking Wake, it's kind of just hanging out on the field now.
Yeah, that's you could fake out the Walking Wake, but then you would just be cheating yourself out of a nice little shower, a nice warm shower at the...
Yeah, maybe I would have done it anyway here just to kind of avoid the risk of the critical hit and get the Trick 'em Up more safely, which should pretty much be a good game here. But geez, even with the critical hit, I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
Yeah, this Incineroar is bulky. Here's the Hydro Steam coming out from the Walking Wake. Yeah, sometimes you need a bath, and Incineroar, I think, enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I think it's a similar temperature of my shower this morning. It's kind of, okay, we got it.
There is the Assault, the Astral Barrage Assault will deal good damage to both Pokemon, but nowhere near enough as Knock Off knocks out the Calyrex. Trick Room goes up here for Michael, and that means that there is no out here for Masayoshi. Calyrex and Incineroar tag teaming will be able to take down that dinosaur from the past and give Michael Kelsch a 3-0 record here at NAIC.
Yeah, just a really great set there. To be kind of watching this whole match through, I felt like Mikhail was going to step ahead the whole way, where Masayoshi was just respecting plays that Mikhail knew he was threatening. He just never went for them, right? So the Draco Meteor the first game, the second game is with the fake out and a number of other attacks where it's like, oh, well, you're going to play around me doing this, so I'm just going to not do that and beat the counter to whatever my obvious move is. It just, I felt like Masayoshi just kind of needed to play a little bit quicker there, right? Where it's like he was starting in game one and